Welcome back to another JavaScript tutorial. So in today's video, we are going to talk about how to work with word tables using the JavaScript Word API. So we're going to try to cover as much as we can with this particular topic. So this particular object that we're going to be working with, there are certain components about it that are not finished, it would appear, because, just for example, there is a rows collection, but there is not a columns collection from what I can tell. So with that, it kind of is just also like, reiterating the same idea I've been saying since the beginning, which is, the JavaScript API is constantly being developed. So they're constantly adding new stuff to it. I think recently what they added to, I have to look now. They usually give you like an overview and you can see which ones they've been doing. I think the last one was Word API 1.3. So that was the last one they did. They haven't done much since that one. I know they have XML content that they're trying to put in there. And I think there's a couple other things, just because I think how they're basically pushing things out is if it's accessible in the online version, I believe, then if it's accessible there, they want to focus more on the the online version. So this is a good way if you ever want to kind of stay on top and say like, okay, like what's changing, what are they adding? For some, they haven't updated in a very long time. So like PowerPoint API, Visio API, OneNote API, that one has not been updated recently. They now have an Excel API online one. So this one, I guess, is just strictly related to the online version, but they now have that one. And then you can also see what's going on in the preview. So that's kind of neat. You get a nice opportunity to see some stuff. But they're constantly adding to it. It just takes some time, obviously, as you can imagine. Additionally, I did want to I'm going to be a tease. I guess that's the best way to put it. So this is a project I have been working on with one of my friends. His name is Justin. So Justin, if you are watching this, you can now officially say you are part of the channel in a certain regard, right? So anywho, I know most of you are wanting to start building Office add-ins using the JavaScript API. So one of them I am planning to build is going to be related to the SEC, but more importantly, there is a even bigger topic that Justin and I are working on currently, which is once it loads and gets through all the fun process, you'll kind of see where I'm going, because I know a lot of you will probably love this topic. This is the fun stuff we're going to have to start learning. So Node.js, JavaScript, HTML. But if you notice here, we now have a code editor inside of Excel that does Python syntax highlighting. I wonder what we could do with that, right? So right now it's really basic. We just have a code editor and we just have the syntax highlighting, and we just have a way of basically allowing you to write Python code in Excel. And then we are now in the process of trying to execute that Python code, so that way it runs against the VBA object model using the Win32com library. So the ultimate goal with this is being able to write Python code that taps into the VBA object model and will allow you to basically use Excel from Python inside of the Excel application using an editor. So this is kind of our just initial framework, but we've already made a lot of progress. It might not seem like it, but trust me, this has been a lot of work. But ideally, we're trying to think about how can we truly integrate Python into Excel. This is probably one of the most requested features out there right now when it comes to Excel. And technically, it looks like we have everything we really need in order to do that. It's still early stages. I mean, who knows? We might come into hiccups and realize we can't do it. But right now we haven't seen anything that's kind of hindered it. It's just kind of being a little bit creative. But with that being said, let's get back to the actual purpose of the video, which is working with the table object. So to start things off, we are now working in a Word document. We're no longer working in an Excel worksheet or workbook. So we have to keep in mind that when we're referencing certain objects, it's a little bit different, but nothing too crazy. It just means we have to understand that this object model is a little bit different in how it's organized. So the template code they give you when you create a new quote unquote script is going to always have this body variable, which represents the document object, and then the body property. And then this is supposed to return a range object, I believe. Well, I guess they call it a body object, but I'm believing it's something where I think behind the scenes, it's still technically representing a range object, if I remember correctly, or maybe it doesn't, maybe because it's not. But regardless, the body property is basically representing the document body itself. So you can use that as your starting point. Just keep in mind, it's a little bit bigger than most people want to work with. So a lot of times they're saying, well, I want to work on like the second paragraph, right? Well, then you kind of just have to realize that then naturally you're going to have to go a little bit finer detail when you're selecting the content where you might want to insert a table or something like that. But all this again is doing is grab the document body. So that's pretty straightforward, hopefully. And then we can actually get right to it, which is insert a table into the document body. It's going to have 7 rows and 4 columns. So we'll create a new variable. We will call it word table. Word table. We're going to take our body object and we're going to call the insert. And if you look down here, there is an insert table method. And this insert table method specifies that you need a row count, a column count, and then you need a location. And there is an optional one, I believe, that specifies the value. So if you want to have pre-populated values, you can do that as well. Now with ours, I want 7 rows, and then I want 4 columns, and I want the word range location dot start. So what I'm saying is, hey, insert this table at the range that I'm currently at the start of it. Because think about it, if you were to like just say, have a larger range, then what you're saying is, hey, this entire selection of that range, I want to insert at the beginning of it. So this is why it's specifying, hey, where do you want this? And I'm basically passing through the enumeration, and I could also, if I wanted to, do the actual string too. So I could just say start. So capital S, start, and then just as a string. So this will insert a new table like that. So you can see right here, nothing too crazy. From here, I want to grab my rows that belong to my table. So next we're going to grab the rows of the table. So this is kind of the fun part, right? No, kind of. And then we'll just store it in a new variable. We'll call it word rows. And then we'll do the word table. And then I'm going to call the rows property. And then this one obviously returns the rows to collection. So all the rows in the table, including your header rows if you have one. Now, if I want to be very explicit and just grab the first row, there's actually a dedicated method to that. So this one I can grab the first row if I wanted to. And so I can just say, again, just a new variable. I'll just call it row 1 to keep it simple at this point. I'll go into my word rows collection, and you'll notice there is a get first. And that basically is returning the first row. It does not appear there is a get last, unfortunately. So unfortunately, if you want to get the last one, you'd have to do that a different way. You probably have to get the count and then use the items method in order to get, or the items property to select it that way. So that's, just one of those things, again, still in development. So naturally there's going to be some limitations. Let's fill the header row. So it's like a navy blue. I guess that's the best way. Row 1. And then I need the shading color property. Now this one can either take basically the name of the color, or you can pass through a hex code. So the hex code I'm going to be using is 6, and this is supposed to represent navy blue. And you can kind of see it's a little bit navy blue. It might not be exact to, this one over here, but it's pretty close. All right. And then from here, we now have our first row. So something else we can do is we can also just do some additional formatting. So just do some additional formatting. And then I'm going to make this just a tiny bit bigger. Hopefully you guys can see that. Okay, so we'll take row 1 and then we'll do the preferred height equals 40. So this is just going to be saying that the height of the row. We'll do row 1, I'll do the font, and then I'll call the name property, and then I will set mine equal to Roboto Medium because I have that installed. And then I'll do some other stuff like row font size. I'll just make that 12. And then I can also specify the horizontal alignment. So this one I can say I want it to be centered. And then I can also do the row 1 vertical alignment. And this one, you would think it's centered. It's not, it's actually center. And it's basically saying I want it to be in the center of the row. So if I run this, you can now see it's a little bit, formatted at this point. So the size has changed. Now it's kind of boring at this point. We should probably add some values. So add some values to the header row. And what we'll do is we'll do row 1 dot values. It equals an array with an array. And inside the main array, you separate each value that you want in each column by a comma. And so in this case, I'm just putting in some, whatever values. And then what this will do is we'll insert all those values into the row. And so now you can see a little bit more meaningful, right? All right. So from here, let's loop through the remaining rows and add some values and do some formatting. So we got to do one thing first. So first, load the items property for the rows collection. So anytime we want to do looping, especially with the items the items property, we have to load it first because the idea is that the items is changing constantly if you think about it, right? So up here, it might have been 7, but then say you add a new row. So now it's 8. And then it's like down here, you add another one. So the idea is that you want to load it. So you want to sync everything and say, okay, at this point in time, get the count of the rows and then start looping through it. So that's kind of the idea. It's like get the current count and then start looping through it. Now, I know for some of you might be going, well, in VBA, we don't have to do that. Well, unfortunately, I guess with JavaScript, we're not so lucky. Okay, and so what we'll do is we'll do await context sync. And from here, it will load that property, and then we can start looping through the rows. But I don't want to do the first one, right? So we'll do for, and then we'll have var I equals 1. So I'm not starting at 0. Very important. I'm not starting at 0. Semicolon I, and then word rows, items, and then we'll do the length, and we're going to say iterate I by 1. Okay. And then what we have to do here is we'll just do that. Oh, and I forgot my little semicolon there. So it's 2 semicolons. And then from here, I can start going through the process of just doing my formatting. So the first thing we'll do is we'll add some values. So we'll do word rows dot items, and then we'll do I. So we're saying, okay, at this point in the loop, grab the row that we're currently on, set the values equal to Alex, and then 70, and then, I don't know, what is that, 40,000, and then 60,000, right? So nothing crazy. I'm just simply specifying all the values, and I do want to make sure that's assigned to an equal operator. And obviously what it means is every row is going to have the same values, but this is kind of just demonstrating to you this is how you would set values if you wanted to do it through a loop. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll change the color to a dark gray. And so we'll say word rows, items, and then we'll do I, dot font, dot color, and then 6, 6, 6, 6. Is it 5 or 6? It's 6. Okay, so that's going to change the font color. We can also change the vertical alignment. So we'll do word, rows, items, I, vertical alignment. And this one I'll do a little bit different just so you can see there's different ways of doing it. I'll go into my word object. There is a vertical alignment enumeration, and then there is a member of that enumeration collection, which is defined as centered. And so this is obviously saying, hey, you want it in the center. All right, change the height. Word rows dot items dot I preferred height. That's just got to be a number, and we'll have that one be 35. And then let's actually loop through some of the cells while we're looping through that row. So what we'll do is we'll grab the cells, and then we'll do kind of what we were doing up here, which is load the items property. And then we're not going to loop through it this time. We'll just manually specify which cell we want to format and stuff like that. But you know, the idea is kind of generally the same. And initially I was kind of going like, well, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, can't we just do a column? And I was like, well, it doesn't look like we can. So unfortunately, this is kind of what we have to work with right now, but at least you can do it. So we'll do word rows items. And then we have to specify the row that we're on, because that one has a property called cells. And what we'll do is we'll load for that cells collection, the items property. Okay. And then we got to do the await context sync. And once we've done that, we can start working with those individual cells. So, just, set the alignment of certain cells. That's really what we're just doing here. It's a little bit longer than I would like, but at this point, let's just kind of do it. And then if we come across a better way, we'll definitely approach it. So this one, I want column 2 at this point. So I want column 2, and I want the horizontal alignment to be right. Okay. And then this one, I want word rows, items, and just to kind of make things progress a little bit faster, I'm just going to copy that line, and we'll just, I copied it again. And what we'll do, Control V, we'll do 2, 3. And again, if, just so some, different way of doing it, we could do horizontal, what? Is there not a horizontal one? Alignment. Okay, whatever. No, that's weird. Why would you name that one horizontal alignment, but then just leave this one as alignment? Interesting. We'll just do justified. Make it a little bit different, right? It's kind of odd. I don't know why they would name that one alignment. Hopefully it works. That's the bigger question. And then also there's, again, other things you could do that you could potentially set. So this one's being a little bit extreme, but this is just to kind of, just to kind of demonstrate to you, like there's also like the cell padding. So you can adjust that if you wanted to. So you can say, okay, like, hey, I want to set my cell padding. So that way it's like the inside content, is a little bit, easier to read maybe. I don't know. I'm going to do like a really extreme one. So with setting the cell padding, you first have to define the location. So where are you setting this padding relative to in that cell? So we're saying from the top, do like 30, I think that's points, if I remember correctly. Set the cell padding. Again, it's just to iterate, more formatting. This is honestly just a lot of formatting, but at least you're hopefully starting to kind of see a pattern. Sometimes we have to load a property before we start doing it, but let's see what this looks like. You can kind of see it's obviously a little bit extreme. Like, okay, like honestly 30, that's a little bit excessive. Let's maybe see if 10 looks a little bit better. Yeah, not great, but it'll live. And then you can obviously tell it's a little bit of a weird alignment because this one's justified, but for right now, it's fine. Okay, so next what we'll do is we'll work with the borders, right? So grab all the borders. And so we'll create a new variable. We'll call it table borders. Then we'll do word table get border. And you got to specify the border location. So word border location. And in this case, if I want to work with all of them, I can just specify all. So this one, I'm grabbing all my borders. What I can do is I can change the color. So this one is change the color, I think it to a dark blue, if I remember correctly. Table borders, there's a color property. And again, we can set a hex code, which will be 0000044. There you go. We can also change the width. So change the width, table borders, width, and then 1. Okay. We can also change the types. We can change the border type. So we'll say table borders dot type word border type, and then there's single. Now, just to kind of show you again, you can see there's obviously a ton. Oh, there's a wave one? Well, I'm doing wave. I don't care if it looks weird, that one. I mean, at that point, what? That's weird, but I like it. It's going to be our new one from now on. I didn't know there was a wave one. You learn something new every day. All right, we'll just keep going a little bit. So we'll just do some more border stuff. So I'm just going to copy this one. This one's actually going to remove some remove some borders. So that way, maybe if we don't want the outside ones or something like that. So we'll call this table borders inside vertical. And this one will be our inside vertical one. And with this one, I'll say table borders IV. I can set the type. And if we don't want borders, we just specify none. Again, just to make it simple, we will, what is it? Outside? We'll call it OT. OT. And there's bottom, there's inside, there's outside, right? Top, we'll just do outside. And with this one, we'll set that to none too. So let's see what it looks like. Yeah, there you go. See, that is something you can submit. But hopefully you can kind of see now, we have a table, we've done some formatting, we've inserted, we've looped through some of the rows, we've added values, we've understood how to get individual cells. Some of the challenges though, just so you're aware. So for example, there is no, where is it? Items.I. There is no column. So unfortunately, that is one of the drawbacks right now. There is no column collection. You have styles that you can use. So you can style your table and you can set the width. You can set, in fact, interesting enough, I wonder if to word table width. I've never used this one, so I have no idea if it's, so maybe you could do something like, hey, I want it 300. There's other ones in here too, where you can do things like, what is it? You can distribute. Well, and see, this is the weird thing too. So for example, there is a, where is it? There's a distribute column. Yeah, so there's distribute columns, but there's not a distribute rows. There's delete columns and delete rows, and there's add columns and add rows, but there's not, distribute rows, and there's not a columns collection or something like that. They have this header row count. It's kind of interesting because from what I can see, it doesn't seem to say anything, like in the sense of, oh, I need to load it first, sorry. Word table, load, and then what is it? Header row count. Yeah, and then await context sync. Okay. Or it just might not even have it. I haven't run this one before. Okay, that's odd. Interesting. It ran it each time. That's kind of weird. But I guess the idea is that this is our header row, but I don't know how that's being. I guess by default, when you insert a table, there is a header row. And from there, I guess you could even, in a sense, I don't know if there's like a property where you could actually say like, hey, I don't want a header row, right? So you could maybe even set it equal to 0. Let's try it out, right? Sometimes you just try it and you see what happens. And if it doesn't work, you know, okay, well, that's not how you do it, but at least I know. So we'll know, right? For this one, like we know we've inserted, so we know it's going to start it. So if this one turns it off, okay, so it sounds like if you set it equal to 0, it's going to turn off header row. So that's kind of nice. So I guess if you don't want a header row, then you set it equal to 0. And then if you do want a header row, you set that equal to 1. I guess that kind of makes sense, right? So I guess in the same regard, like you could even say, maybe there's like some other logic where you could specify like, okay, like there is this like, there's this like is uniform, and I think it's a read-only property. I'm not sure. Indicates whether all, oh, so it's read-only. So you can only read this one, but this one will basically tell you if it's uniformed. So obviously if it's not, then you could sit there and say, okay, like then call the distribute column one, but you can't obviously do it the other way. Now there's some other stuff too, where it's like there's styles and shadings. Those ones are pretty straightforward. I mean, they're kind of just doing exactly what you were doing up here. So that shouldn't be too crazy. But you can even do things like style, last column. But these ones are weird. It's like just a Boolean. And I don't know what happens if you don't actually have like this one. So this one like turns it on. Problem is like there's no style. Oh, well, I guess there is a style, but the problem is like if you don't have a particular style active that leverages that, then it's not going to show any difference. So if you're just like inserting like a normal table, then you're not going to be able to see anything because naturally it's going to say like, hey, wait a minute, like, you know, there's just nothing there. Oh, that's why it wasn't working, because I had it in my loop. Oops, my bad. Let me see what else. That's kind of fun now. See, this is where the interesting stuff is sometimes when you're just recording and you kind of go like, okay, style built in. First column, total row, banded rows, table styles. Normally, like if you hover over it, it will tell you. Oh, okay. Okay, this is good. This is good. Style. And so if I want like plain table 2, maybe this one I can use it. We'll do grid table. Maybe that's like something cooler, right? So we'll just delete that really quickly. Okay, so there you go. Now you styled it too. So if you want to style, this is how you can do it. And obviously you can kind of tell there's a bunch to it. So, you know, if you're one of those active people who are like me and gets extremely, what is the word, specific about formatting, then you'll have a field day with it. But yeah, I think at this point, I'll just kind of cut it off. I think we've kind of covered enough, or at least most of pretty much anything we can. So at this point, if you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments below and I will try to get back to you. And then upcoming topics, obviously we've got the big one, which is going to be, we're going to be building an add-in. It's going to be mainly for the SEC stuff right now. Unfortunately, it's just taking me some time because there's really not a ton of examples out there. And some of the stuff I'm trying to do, I don't have anything else to, what is the word, compare it to. So again, a lot of it's experimentation. And then I'll keep you up to date as I get this kind of like code editor stuff done with Justin. Hopefully we'll kind of have more breakthroughs with that, but that would be really cool if we can finally have a code editor where we can access all of Python from Excel and leverage it real time inside of our particular application. I think that'd be so cool. Ideally, I'd like to integrate that Python.NET Excel library that I'm building. I haven't forgot about that one. It's just taking time. And unfortunately, that hasn't been my big priority as much as it should be. But yeah, that's kind of the ultimate goal, is that we could somehow leverage that, because then we could even take that library and make it more customizable to what we're working with. So that's kind of just heads up what's coming along. Oh, I didn't tell you. Edgar, where is it? Ah, yes. So you SEC people, there's an API for Edgar. Had no idea. It was literally nowhere in the SEC. I couldn't believe it. So I signed up for it. It's kind of sad though, because the API key doesn't get active for like an hour. So I hope to start a series on that, because I think that is going to be so cool. I didn't realize that an API. And obviously that would make parsing some portions of it remarkably easier than having to go through the file. I mean, not all of it. I mean, basically they limit like how far you can look back. So it's not to say that series was worthless. It's just, you know, for the newer ones, like just use the API if you can, right? Older ones, okay, we have to use the other one. That's fine, but we know how to do it now. So yeah, kind of discovered that the other day, and I was kind of excited about it. Way too excited, but I thought it was neat. So yeah, that was the other big disclosure. So talk to you again, and we will see you in the next video.